Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Tszyu returns after a disastrous 2024 to face the American fighter Joey Spencer, who comes in with a 19-1 record, 11 KOs. Spencer is 25 years of age. He's from Michigan in the US, and he's going all the way to Australia to fight the hometown hero, Tszyu. Like I say, Tszyu had a terrible 2024. He lost his title to the gigantic Sebastian Fundora, all 6'5.5" of him at 154 pounds, freakishly tall. I believe certainly the tallest 154-pound champ of all time, isn't he now? But it was a bloodbath, and Tszyu suffered a terrible gash on the forehead. You know, if you've ever cut your scalp, which I definitely have, more times than I can count, you know, the blood flows easily off the scalp, and this was a real gash. I mean, it looked like he'd been hit with an axe, blood pouring down. Fundora actually showed a lot of grit and a lot of ability in that fight, though, too, because he fought through, I think, a busted nose. He had a cut inside his lip. I mean, there was blood flying all over the place. Both guys showing they really were true warriors, but Fundora got a split decision nod. That was in Vegas. And then in his comeback fight, much trumpeted comeback fight, Tszyu took on Bakram Murtazaliev for the IBF belt. Almost considered Murtazaliev to be a stepping stone, which I couldn't believe it in the build-up to that fight. I thought, they're overlooking this guy. And sure enough, down goes Tszyu 3 times in round 2, once in round 3, and he got stopped in 3 rounds and was absolutely smashed to pieces. And in the post-fight interview, Tszyu, I think, said something, I mean, I'm going to paraphrase here. He said, "What just happened? I don't know what happened. I don't know. I don't understand it." Look, this can happen, but I think if you are one of those sort of national sporting heroes, people can start blowing smoke up your ass and telling you that you're, you know, all things holy. And then suddenly, the next thing you know, someone has pricked that balloon and it's burst, it's popped. And I think that's definitely what happened with Tszyu. I mean, the Fundora fight, he took Fundora as a replacement without a rematch clause. I don't know what his team were thinking. Terrible matchmaking, terrible decision. And he fought his heart out despite a horrendous injury. And he emerged from that contest with a lot of credit, actually. A lot of credit, which is probably why going into the Murtazaliev fight, everyone was thinking, he's good, you know, he's all right. Murtazaliev ain't bad. Tszyu's Tszyu, and he's going to win. Murtazaliev, of course, from Russia, 32 years of age, he was undefeated as well. And the Tszyu fight was his last fight. That moved him to 23 wins, no draws, no defeats, with 17 KOs. And he's a tough man. I mean, the Russians are tough, you know, all that Eastern European lot. Whenever I've gone to Eastern Europe, you walk around I visit cities. I'm interested in laying on the beach, cooking myself. I like to wander around cities, talk to people, you know, just sort of try and soak up a little bit of culture. And you talk to some of these Eastern European lads and go to bars, you go to any kind of social place. If you get chatting, once they catch the English accent, because foreigners like to speak English. Us English people, we're ignorant. We don't like to try and speak foreign languages. But if they catch the English accent, they'll talk to you in English. There's just a sort of air of toughness about these. They're resolutely polite, most of them are. But they're just tough people, you know, really tough people, even in some of these smaller former sort of Soviet satellite nations. Anyway, I'm digressing. My point is that Murtazaliev is an extremely underrated fighter, and his manager is Igor Klimas, so he doesn't mess around with people who are wasters. And Murtazaliev isn't based in Russia. He's based in Oxnard, California, and has a top team around him. And so Tszyu taking him on as almost I'll get rid of him and then I'll be back to normal. I'm sorry, but everything leading up to that fight was just terrible, terrible preparation. And Tszyu is now 30 years of age, and you've got to wonder, if you suffer such a shattering defeat, kind of like Joshua when he got smashed to bits by Daniel Dubois, you've got to say how much residue is there going to be? How much of his confidence has been irreparably damaged? Because it wasn't just cracked. I mean, it must have been shattered. And certainly his demeanour post-fight, where he still looked like he was concussed. He probably was concussed. Terrible business. I can't see how he's going to go into this fight with the same level of psychological confidence, toughness, resolution that he did in his previous two fights. Because, like I say, the Fundora fight, okay, you can take something from that. You can say, yeah, I got sliced up and I carried on fighting and I lost a split decision. All right, these things happen. But the Murtazaliev fight, especially it was over in America as well, so he didn't have the home cooking going on. But to be on the international stage, kind of like, again, I'll use Joshua as an example, when he got bounced around the ring by Andy Ruiz like a basketball, that was in America, and of course the Americans looked at him and said, "Oh, what a pretender, not a contender, a pretender." Perhaps Tszyu got a lot of that kind of stick as well. So there's a lot of question marks over Tim Tszyu going into this Joey Spencer fight. But let's have a look at Spencer, because like I say, he is only 25. He's only got one defeat on his record. I haven't seen a great deal of him, but and the fights I have seen, I saw his last fight, which was against an undefeated fighter called Miguel Angel Hernandez. He was undefeated in 9, and Spencer won a majority decision over him. The other fights I've seen him have been against lesser. I mean, he beat Kevin Salgado, who was undefeated at the time. He stopped him. No, he didn't stop him. It was a unanimous decision, I think, if I remember rightly. But then he bumped into a guy called Jesus Alejandro Ramos Jr., to give him his full name, who was also undefeated in 19. So you had a battle of the undefeateds. And to be honest with you, Mr. Jesus, it was two Hail Marys, because he absolutely dominated Joey Spencer. Knocked him down in the first round. Spencer was extremely game, but Ramos Jr., he just beat him up and stopped him. And I remember, even though that was stopped in the 7th round, I remember thinking as early as the 3rd or 4th, the referee's got to have a look at this, because Spencer was getting battered, absolutely battered. And in fact, Ramos Jr. Went on to lose a 12-round decision to Erickson Lubin. Looked very, very lackluster in that fight. I don't know what was wrong. But he's come back with 3 wins since then, 3 stoppage wins against more modest opposition. Lubin's still got something left. He's actually a pretty good fighter, Erickson Lubin. Quite underrated. But he certainly beat the crap out of Joey Spencer. So are we going to say that was a baptism by fire, kind of a lesson learned the hard way for Joey Spencer, and that he's actually better? Because he has come back with 3 wins. Against, again, there was an undefeated fighter that he beat, Hernandez, but the other 2 were, I think, a 6 and an 8 rounder where he against very modest opposition. I think one of them had a losing record. But at the same time, sometimes you can, you get your feet, you take a batter in, you get a little bit of confidence back with a few easier fights, and then you're raring to go. And going all the way to Australia was never an easy thing, because it's such an arduous trip to get there. But you would assume that Joey Spencer has prepared, right? I mean, if you're doing prediction videos, you've got to assume that someone's prepared correctly, and he's up for it. And again, I emphasise his age. He is a young man. He's 5 years younger than Tszyu. Tszyu's 30. So this is a difficult one to predict, because there are so many intangibles involved. Again, I emphasise I haven't seen anything of Spencer that makes me think he is a world beater. He looked to me like a decent sort of B- level fighter, whereas Tszyu, certainly in the past, even though I always thought he was slightly overrated, even coming up. I mean, he's got some good wins. Don't get me wrong, he beat Terrell Gaucher, is it Gaucher, is that how you pronounce it? Who is so unlucky, has got 5 defeats on his record now, Gaucher, and you can make cases for him winning a few of these fights that he got jobbed the other week against a guy called Garcia. But he was he was on the floor against Gaucher. And then he stopped Tony Harrison, and Carlos Ocampo got done in a round. So he's got some good wins. Brian Mendoza, I thought that was a good win because Mendoza was coming off a knockout of Fundora, who Tszyu would go on to win. Mendoza's a tough guy. But Tim outpointed him. I mean, there's some good wins on his record. He's even got a win over one of the Inoues, Takashi Inoue. So, and then there's an early knockout with Steve Spark and Dennis Hogan. These are Australian fighters who are. So he sort of cut his teeth domestically and then moved on to the world stage. And he's a good fighter. I would say Tim Tszyu, at his best, is probably a sort of A- fighter. Whereas I've seen with Joey Spencer, from what I've seen of him, and certainly bearing in mind the battering he took in his only defeat, I'd say he was a sort of B- fighter. But with Tszyu, you just don't know, do you? I mean, these are both orthodox fighters. One's very, very experienced on the world stage. One has got his opportunity to fight on the world stage. And, we saw it with George Kambosos the other week, who had a much, much tougher fight than it looked on paper. Is this going to be one of those situations for Tszyu? Now, Tszyu, I think Tszyu will probably prevail here, but I don't see it being a blowout. I think Spencer will give him some problems. I think Tszyu will probably get on top of Spencer. Spencer, from what I've seen of him, is not difficult to hit. So I think probably what we're going to see is Tszyu cautiously starting the fight. Spencer is going to come forward and try and put it on him. He's away from home. He knows he's got to do some work. And his style lends itself to being a front-footed pressure fighter. Even though he's not that difficult to hit, Spencer. And Tszyu does hit pretty hard. So I think he's a game kid, Spencer. So I think probably what we'll see is Tszyu having a slightly cautious start, a little bit of reconnaissance work going on in the first 2 rounds. Then by the fifth round maybe, he might feel, okay, it's time to go to work. His confidence will be a little bit up. I see him probably in the 5th, 6th round. This is a 10-rounder, by the way, not a 12-rounder. Probably taking over in the 5th, 6th round. There's going to be some competitive rounds in there, I think. I think Spencer is a game kid and has come to make a splash. But I do see Tszyu sort of using his experience, especially experience over the 12 rounds. He's done 12 rounds on several occasions. I see him either stopping Spencer late, 8, 9, 10, that sort of rounds, or winning a clear-cut decision. But I'm really intrigued by this fight, not so much the fight itself, but just to see what Tszyu's got left. And whether just how much that bad defeat has, 2 defeats last year have taken out of him. Because at 30, he's probably in his prime. He's not going to get any better. Not really. Maybe so slightly. But yeah, I think Tszyu wins this fight. I'll go for late stoppage, wide points, that sort of thing. But yeah. Let me know what you think. I mean, some of you Aussie guys, you probably, I know you're big fans of Tszyu, but some of you Americans, have you seen more of Spencer than I have? Leave your comments below. I want to hear it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this video. If you could subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, I'd appreciate that a great deal. You'd be helping the channel out. Spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Bye for now.